You know, a criminal case is all over the place when possible outcomes could include prison time, significant, fines, house arrest, or a mix of some. Or probation even. So not even house arrest. And that's because right now we know the jury got the instructions this morning from Judge Merchant. They are now deliberating.
Yeah, just the last few minutes.
They've only been deliberating, I think, about now, 30 minutes?
CNN has a timer going.
I know.
So I'd love to hear where that timer's at.
Still just getting their coffee and Danish. But, what does this mean? 31 minutes.
If you're watching live, 31 minutes.
Here's what usually happens in criminal trials. Usually happens in normal criminal trials. If a jury comes back very quickly, it means they all agree, and usually that they all agree that someone is guilty. But the judge today just got to, because the prosecution went to 8 o'clock last night.
Yeah, I was texting Will. I go, "Are we in
5 or 6 hours? 5 hours of closing."
I asked Will late last night. I go, "Are we in deliberate? Like, is it happening now?" And he's like, "Yeah, they just wrapped up." And I was like, "I was putting my children to sleep."
They said that part of that is a strategy of just trying to wear people down, to say,
exhaust them.
This is like taking up so much of my life. I'm so confused. And the judge issued, which he has the prerogative to do, but you don't have to do. He sent them back with nothing except for their own notes. So if any questions come up about his instructions that they received, they have to then, if there's any point of law or issue, they have to send a note to the judge, then go into the courtroom. That's public, so reporters will be able to go in, and the attorneys, and they'll be able to see what the jury was asking information about. So you'll get a hint about where they are in their deliberations if they so do that. But what I thought was kind of most bizarre was how the judge today said you can come about this and find President Trump guilty of a felony, but you don't have to agree on what the felony is. And so he explained it like this. They have to be unanimous on the fact that, again, they falsified business records. But you don't have to be unanimous on what makes that a felony. So you could believe that it was the violation of the FEC Act, Campaign Act. You could believe it was falsification of other business records. You could believe it was a violation of tax laws. So different jurors could believe each of that as the second point to make it a felony, and he would consider that a unanimous guilty verdict.
It's wild.
That is not. This is not. I mean, when President Trump says this is just. I think what is the word he just used other than garbage? And
he said, "Not even Mother Teresa could beat these," or something like that.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear that.
I think was interesting
because
to get
it's
ahead
kind
of
of saying, "Hey, I'm going to lose."
Right.
And then if you win, I guess it's like, great.
Yeah, I mean, if you set the bar, if you set the bar so high as that Mother Teresa would lose in this jury.
In listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see.
And right now, I mean, Trump is certainly, according to his speeches he gave today, kind of prepping people for a guilty verdict. It definitely feels that way because he's saying not even Mother Teresa could get out of these charges. So that is what he is certainly, that's what he and his team have said. Be prepared to get slapped with a guilty verdict.
I think, again,
they're deliberating now.
They're deliberating. It's a shorter week because of Memorial Day. So, you have to remind yourself we're already to Wednesday. Usually, this is not always, but usually in a criminal case, if they come back very quick, that's not good for the defendant. If they go on and on, like through the weekend, things are getting better for the defendant. It doesn't mean automatically, by the way. This is so complicated that they could go on, and I think still, as Donald Trump said, well, let's play it. They could go on, And it wasn't matter if it was Donald Trump or some other people he mentioned, that because they threw so much at the wall for this jury. And by the way, they're not letting the jury take anything back from the case except for their own personal notes. So you can imagine how the two lawyers on the jury, and I'm not accusing them of doing this, but if they were Trump haters, they could really bully the jury into thinking, hey, we're the lawyers here, trust us.
Yeah.
He did this, and this is regardless of what you think about President Trump, this is illegal. But listen to what President Trump had to say right after.
Just moments ago.
This is just right after the jury began deliberations, the courtroom was cleared.
Every single legal scholar and expert said this is no case, it shouldn't be brought, and it certainly could have been brought 7 years ago, not in the middle of a presidential election. It was all done by Joe Biden. This judge contributed to Joe Biden, and far worse than that, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because I have a gag order. Far worse than that, by 1,000 times worse than that. The worst I've ever heard, but I can't talk about it. It'll be talked about, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it'll be talked about in the history books.
He has to be very careful with the words he chooses because this judge has threatened him with jail over violating, he has violated they've found that he's violated the gag orders. I think a lot of these gag orders are unconstitutional because they don't allow him to defend himself to the public, especially when you shut off the cameras in the courtroom, because we have to rely on journalists, which means if you're a conservative, you may go to like a Fox News or Newsmax to find out people that were in the room. If you're a liberal, you'll go to CNN or MSNBC to find out what happened in the room. And then a lot of the country is just waiting to, kind of just get an opinion the next day. They're not following daytime news coverage.
No.
They got a job. I mean,
they've not been watching the live tweets that have been coming in pretty much. I mean, that's all it's been. It has been weeks of a red screen. For some reason, they all decided red screen, and just here's what's happening live.
I mean, I'd say probably half the country agrees with you, Debbie. This is a farce. They agree with what President Trump is saying. These are like show trials. And the worst of the American justice system, when you come up with laws that have already outrun their statute of limitations, this falsification of business records. So you go and find other laws, you try to what we call bootstrap those laws to them, and the judge is saying, pick one of the three, and you can make it a felony. And by the way, the jury doesn't have to agree on which one of the three. They can each pick their own, and that'll make it a felony. I never even heard of anything like that before in my life.
People are asking also about whether he can appeal this. Is this the end of the road, or does this continue on? And what does that mean if you get convicted? Let's say he gets convicted. Does that mean next thing would be a sentencing and then an appeal? You'd
be sentenced, and then could probably come, depending on how long they set out for when the sentencing would occur. And there's a lot of complications with his sentencing because of his current candidate for office. He has lifetime Secret Service protection. So depending on what he got convicted of, was it just the misdemeanors? Was it just fines? So again, that gets complicated on its own. So depending on that, yes, you could move ahead with the appeal even before sentencing. That appeal, though, again, you're still stuck in New York State Court. So it's not like, and when you appeal, remember, you're going to judges now. You're not going to get a jury again. So you're going to likely judges who've been appointed or have won races, depending on the court, in a very liberal city.